Welcome to our live judging of Brick by Brick in partnership with Stephen Lawrence Charitable Trust's Housing for a Better World competition. I'm Chloe Phelps, Head of Design and Commercial and Deputy CEO of Brick by Brick. Tonight we've got a really jam-packed schedule, so I'm going to keep my intro really brief so that we can kind of move on to kind of the submissions. But this is our live judging of our shortlisted 6 practices, who we've kind of given them the challenge of reducing and distilling their ideas down to 20 slides that they each have 20 seconds to present. And Crawley, we're making them do it on a timer. So it should be an interesting process. We had an absolutely fantastic response to our call for ideas, and it's really expanded our reach beyond practices that we were previously aware of, and obviously there are also some practices we were aware of who have have matured over the last couple of years. Brick by Brick, for those who don't know us, we are Croydon Council's development company, and we build and design and build homes for people in Croydon for private sale and rent. We've been operating for about the last 4 and a bit years, and this is the first time that we've done a competition, and the original intention was really to extend our reach and find the next generation of designers. And it's been a very interesting process in which to do this, and competitions are not always the right way of reaching out to people, but I think in this instance it's been a big learning curve for us, and had a number of interesting conversations along the way. But what we are kind of committed to is that this will transform how we commission our architectural and all of our consultancy services from here on in. And the most important thing is to take steps towards making sure that our consultant panel is representative of the population of Croydon. So I will crack on. I've got a few introductions to do. I will hand over to Julie from the Stephen Lawrence Charitable Trust in a couple of seconds, and then also I'll get our judges to introduce themselves. So Julie, over to you. Right, you're on mute. You might need to unmute yourself.
There we go. Sorry about that. We're absolutely thrilled to be here, and have really enjoyed working with Brick by Brick on this. I think most people are familiar with the Stephen Lawrence Charitable Trust, but essentially our work is around creating a fairer and more inclusive society. And at the core of a lot of what we do is architecture, because that was the career that Stephen himself hoped to enter, although we work across all industries. And I think one of the things that we're probably all aware of is, no matter how highly qualified you are, how well trained or how talented you are, it doesn't make a difference to the industry if you can't get a job either working as an architect in a practice, or in fact if your practice isn't getting work. So up until now, we've done a lot of work around bringing diverse talent into the industry. So we have a schools programme working with young people, and that opens up all sorts of careers, including architecture, to them. But also our Building Futures programme, which is, once people want to follow a career in architecture, offers things like mentoring and bursaries and other things. The block comes once they have those qualifications, potentially. So it's really exciting to be working with a developer who shares our commitment to diversity. And I think the process that we've been through has shown how you can create a process that brings people in rather than excludes them. And as a result, we've got a really exciting group of architects and proposals to look at. So we're really pleased to be here, and we're really excited to see all the presentations.
And just to echo what Julie said, Chanel and I work at the Stephen Lawrence Charitable Trust as the head of programs. So it's lovely to meet you all too. And I'm sure as time goes on, even beyond this competition, I will have a chance to meet and speak with you all for the work that we do at the Trust.
Great. All right, thanks. And if I can just go around the judges to introduce themselves and wave. So first up, Anisha.
Hello. Hi everyone, my name is Anisha Jogani. I work at Croydon Council and lead the placemaking team at the local authority. Really excited to be here and hear the presentations from the shortlist.
Next up is Betty.
Hi everyone, my name is Betty Owoo, and I'm a young trustee at the Architecture Foundation and a long-term resident of Croydon, and I'm really excited to be here as well, and for all the presentations to be public for the first time, for everyone to see the great work.
Mother Joyce, I think, with us. Yep.
My name is Mother Joyce. I'm a priest in the north of Croydon, in North Borough. I'm also part of 12 churches, which is called a deanery, and a resident as well. So I'm really interested, very interested in anything to do with housing in Croydon, and really excited about the adventure that I've been through with the architect looking at that. So yes, I'm really happy to be here tonight. Thank you.
Praga.
Hi everyone, I'm Praga Saha. I am an alumni of the Stephen Lawrence Trust, and I'm part of a research project we're doing at the Trust called Connecting People and Places, where we sort of look at how BAME stories are told through the built environment in England. I really enjoyed going through all the entries, and very, very excited to learn more about them today.
And we've got Yemi.
Hi, evening all. Yemi Aladerun, architect and major projects manager working for Islington and Shoreditch Housing Association. I can't wait to get the party started.
And we've got Colm.
Hi everyone, Colm Lacey here, Chief Executive of Brick by Brick. Hopefully you know Brick by Brick as a socially conscious developer and an ethical developer. Around half of what we deliver is affordable housing, and all of our profits go back to Croydon to be respent in the community. But also I hope you know us as a design-led developer as well, working with the best architects. So one of the things I'm really particularly excited about here tonight is getting introduced to some people and some people's work that we haven't met before, so that we can work more together in the future. So I'm really excited about it and looking forward to what we can see.
Great. All right, let's get started. I don't think I've missed anybody out, hopefully. Yeah, well, now if I have. Oh. Right, so sharing my screen. Oh, I'm doing the wrong one. Sorry. Right, it's the awkward. Which screen am I sharing? Right, okay, hopefully you can all see my screen. So this is the lineup. So we're going in alphabetical order, 6 practices. I'll let them each introduce themselves as they come on. But really excited about what we're about to see. David, over to you. First up.
Thank you. This is not pressurized at all, but thank you. Thank you for giving us the opportunity. So we're Architecture Doing Place. We specialise in social housing and arts projects when we get the opportunity. Our kind of proposal for this is as much a principle as it is a set of designs. We do have some designs, but we really want to talk about principle. If I could, I'll probably just start my timer. It's a good time to start my timer. Is that architectural procurement from a public purse is significant, it's systemic, and needs to reflect the community. And we want to create opportunity when there's plenty of hard work to go around. I think the context for this is that everybody that Brick by Brick has ever employed, their business model includes access to public work. And we think that enlightened patronage should be extended. Croydon has lots of disparities, economic disparities. This is a map about employment that is overlaid with poverty in different parts of the borough. And you can see certain parts of the borough, you have more chance of getting the work job than anywhere else. Everyone wants a better home. We don't think that's unique to any specific cultural group. We think everybody wants a better home, and everyone deserves a better home, which they can live with dignity and grow space for themselves and their families to grow. But the only difference is who gets to decide what those things are. The site we've chosen to kind of demonstrate some of our ideas on is one that was a project for Croydon Council feasibility that we entered last year, actually, but didn't even get shortlisted, which is in Broad Green, where there's a library and a recreation ground, and there was some looking to put some homes behind that. Our approach often starts with optimizing, not maximizing, because we think that you can create a better consensus with the people around you. You can still get decent amounts of development on sites without necessarily trying to pack it all in. And we're not really sure if that's to anyone's benefit in the long run. Next slide. We use lots of collaborative engagements on things that we do, and this is a pilot project that we did in Notting Hill, where we got members of the community with skills and trade to help us build a one-to-one pilot project. That was just, it was a little something to get them to put something together, and it allowed us to get to know them, allowed them to get to know us through that process. We understand that things have to be paid for, so we love the idea of using cross-subsidy from bits of market density to pay for other things that might be nicer. So artists and makerspace, third age living, family homes. There's a library on that site that we showed you earlier, in a community centre, and also temporary accommodation. Everyday concerns are really, really important. This came to the fore in Grenfell. Things like making sure that a fire appliance can get to your front door when it needs to, making sure that the refuse can get taken away and over a hot bank holiday weekend doesn't build up and start to create smells. Things like these are really simple, but they're really, really important to people that have to live there. Post-COVID, we're working on lots of properties at the moment where we're dealing with adaptable spaces that have breakout and hustle spaces, as we call them, that anticipate homeschooling and home working, but that also anticipate physical distancing, while also allowing people to have convivial daily contact with each other. Safety and security itself is a really important thing, so just passive overlooking and not creating blind corners where antisocial behaviour can fester, that really affects the way that people experience the place that they live even before they get to their front door. So getting from your bus stop to your front door is a fundamentally important thing. Common areas where you can meet your neighbours, where kids can play out and can be overlooked on their doorstep, but also where people can have elective elements of privacy, where they can be clean, they can be overlooked, and people can again get safely from the main front door to their own front door, but also reducing the amount of doors that open onto common areas. Climate emergency, we're really interested in the One Planet living principles that Brick by Brick is itself signed up to. This is a project that we did in Whitechapel, where we tried to use rammed earth, look at using rammed earth in a limited way to replace concrete. Contact. There are other epidemics as well as the pandemic. The epidemic before COVID was about isolation and loneliness, and about knife crime. So there are all sorts of issues about how older people can have opportunities to meet their neighbours. People that are isolated can have access to outdoor amenities. So one of the things we're proposing for whichever site that is chosen is that there are artists and makerspaces, because there's a shortage of those sorts of spaces in London as well, but that is in direct kind of visual contact with OAP accommodation, so that older people can have a contact and they can look out at both doorstep play, but also productivity and things going on in their daily lives. Doorstep play, as I was saying, child-centered communal spaces where kids can be overlooked but can also have some element of independent play where they can make friends and also develop their social skills. Move on to the next one. 5 ways to well-being. This is an idea from the New Economics Foundation that we try and apply to all of our projects that includes just connecting for residents, being active, taking notice, keeping learning, giving in terms of time and words and presence, and just creating that those sorts of background aspects of a community. Placemaking through shared surfaces. We think actual definitive space that is well kept and well maintained is a kind of at the heart of an identity of a community. So people need to see those, and people need to be able to kind of have a vision of a sense of where that is. But those places need to be open, not just kind of empty plazas. Robustness of value for money and maintenance are really, really important to housing managers. The things that might look great on the first day don't necessarily look great on the 5 years down the line, but 10 years down the line, they might have a massive impact in terms of morale on the estate and what people that live there have to live with. So things have to be really well thought through. Our design team and our supply chain, we always try and collaborate. This is a collaborative team that we put together for a project for London Festival of Architecture, and we always try and collaborate with at least one diverse design team member on every project we do, and we've managed to kind of keep that going because we think we're part of that network, and we can expand that into, we can amplify that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, and so sorry, I feel like
no.
20 seconds limit, you did brilliantly. The Ramdurst project sounds really, really interesting. Definitely want to know more about that. Yeah, value for money and maintenance, a massive issue in kind of housing and making sure that that's factored in. I think I'm going to go over to Yemi for her question, if she's...
Yeah, sure. So brilliant, fantastic presentation, David. So I did want to touch on the point I think Chloe just mentioned. So in housing, well, it has been said that in housing, maintenance is more important than design. And if that were more often acknowledged, then the lifespan of many social houses could be drastically extended. What came across quite strongly in your initial application, and here again, is your unique perspective, especially that of being a former housing officer dealing with the day-to-day management and maintenance of social housing, and as an architect delivering social housing. And one of your slides there touches on robustness, maintenance, and achieving value for money, which is something that I would agree is often not given enough consideration, but is crucial for social housing landlords with a long-term stake in the buildings that they develop. So could you expand a little bit more on your distinctive professional experiences and how they inform your approach to the design of social housing?
Yeah, before I retrained as an architect, I was a local authority housing officer. So what I learned from that, and in fact, I also grew up in social housing, so I kind of have these multiple perspectives, and my first degree was in construction management as well. But the interesting thing about what you said is that I don't think social housing should be designed for managers, because actually that's what it had historically been done. But I also think that more architects and more designers should be aware of the decisions they make at the beginning, what the impact those things have further down the line when, you know, if you put timber on something and it's not properly sealed or it kind of rots away, in 5 years' time, somebody has to then live with that for possibly about 20 years after that. And people in social housing don't have the opportunity to move. They have to live there because that's, you know, those are the resources that they have. So you need to really think carefully about how things endure, how things can last, but that's not mutually exclusive with a bit of imagination to making sure that, you know, value for money and robustness and a bit of design quality can come together and can be integrated. And I think it's just with a bit of thought and imagination, those things can be applied.
Fantastic, thank you.
Great. I think we're going to have to go on to the next presentation. Thanks, David. Bolade Design Studios. So I think we've got Tara on hand.
Indeed.
So I will hand over to you. Best of luck. When I flick over to the next slide, that's when your 20 seconds is going to start. All right?
Yeah. Hi, we're excited to be here. I'm Tara from Holiday Design Studio, and we're an award-winning practice based in London. We specialize in making everyday places for people extraordinary through our practice ethos of being design-led, commercially astute, innovative, and sustainable, expanded upon in this presentation on housing for a better world. Croydon's local identity is found in celebrating its cultural diversity. 55% of Croydon residents are white and 45% are from Black and Asian backgrounds, including Caribbean and Bangladeshi, where traditionally the definition of home is quite different from what we know today. We therefore posit to redefine home from the individual house or flat to a collection of dwellings surrounding a multi-layered courtyard. Every design decision is considered in terms of layering its environmental, social, economic impact, embedding placemaking at the heart of home. To do this, we believe stakeholder engagement is critical. While all ethnicities value space equally, different ethnicities use space differently. A Croydon study found that Black and Asians visit parks mainly for children's play, while white for dog walking. These cultural nuances are understood when residents are co-creators of their places. On a communal scale, shared space is the heart of our projects, accommodating social infrastructure, including bakeries run by local residents, open-air schools for informal meetings and storytelling, embedding physical and visual connections where passive learning of cultures can occur. On a dwelling scale, active frontage having doors to ground floor homes rather than through central cores, opportunities for incidental meetings, neighborliness, and natural surveillances can thrive. Challenging open plan living by providing sliding walls to separate rooms and room to grow through extensions so families can stay in a development. An example of stakeholder engagement is our Tripos Court project done for Flagship Group. We engaged Gen Z students before any design was developed and found students felt disconnected from each other. Our response was the student pavilion incorporating a shared canteen and space for student-led activities. Regarding environmental sustainability, we're all very aware of the climate challenges we face. Specifically, many parts of Croydon are prone to flooding, to annual flooding. Brick by Brick want to become a one planet leaders, and Croydon Council have declared a climate emergency. To that end, communally, sustainable urban drainage response to this flooding, including rain gardens, permeable paving, and rainwater collection. Heating networks can provide energy bill certainty to residents. Active travel infrastructure, including buggy parking, means the weekly shopping can be done without a car. On a dwelling scale, we propose high-performance standards, including passive house, ensuring energy efficiency, renewable energy in the form of heat pumps, ensuring fossil fuel-free generation, and utilizing off-site construction to address the performance gap so prevalent in our industry. An example of environmental response is our passive house scheme on a tight garage site for Brighton and Hove City Council. The design is landscape-led, responding to the site's steep topography, allowing access from ground and first floors. Retaining the existing mature trees provides external shading and reduces internal overheating. Regarding health and well-being, loneliness leads to dementia and depression, yet 74% of us do not know our neighbors. In Croydon, over 10,000 older people feel lonely, and the suicide rate is 9.4, higher than the London average of 8.1. Wow. Responding on a communal scale, green and blue infrastructure is embedded for dementia-friendly design, creating a sense of joyful destination through rich biodiverse landscape, such as allotments for food growing, outdoor galleries, and local running clubs. On a dwelling scale, we've used deep recessed or exaggerated projecting balconies that overlap over communal spaces. Generous space standards mean residents don't need to store possessions on balconies, and eradicating fuel poverty through high-performing homes. An example of embedding health and well-being is our home, shortlisted for the Sunday Times British Home Awards. This design incorporates a garden in the middle of the home, socially connecting key spaces. An additional floor can be inserted to accommodate a family's changing needs. Its facade is adaptable, reflecting local planning requirements. We look to have Croydon supply, manufacture, and deliver building materials and services. This contributes to the economy, stimulating a post-COVID recovery in Croydon. To this end, we identified local suppliers across the borough. We've also highlighted local contractors who can work on live sites and contribute to upskilling of local residents through apprenticeships, thereby addressing social value. Local supply and delivery reduce embodied carbon as well due to local travel. This final map shows notional brick-by-brick pipeline sites aligned with the suppliers and contractors highlighted. We believe that this feeds into the ethos of being built in Croydon for Croydon and links with the Stephen Lawrence Charitable Trust ethos of tackling inequality through transforming the life chances of young people. Finally, this translates to a response that is community-led through engaging local residents, environmentally responsible, addressing performance-active travel and fuel poverty, health and well-being through green infrastructure, reducing loneliness and isolation, and delivery through local procurement, leading to economic recovery. We hope that the idea of redefining home from the individual house to a series of high-quality dwellings surrounding a multi-layered courtyard brings the opportunity to celebrate culturally diverse communities and create housing for a better world. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Really, really interesting, particularly the map with all the different contractors on, because there's some in there that I know I haven't heard of already, so that's very useful. I'm going to go over to Anisha to ask a question.
Great, thanks, Chloe. Thanks, Tara. That was really great to actually hear you talk through your proposal firsthand, and yeah, really enjoyed that. Something that you mentioned in terms of co-creators and the communities that the homes are built for being co-creators of those homes. And my question is really about that. Understanding day-to-day needs such as how spaces are used, of the variety of ethnicities and social and cultural backgrounds in Croydon is essential to designing homes that work for all communities. Can you please describe how you would meaningfully engage with the various diasporas in the borough and really embed this meaningful participation into the design development process from an early stage?
Yes, of course. This is something we've done, highlighted in the Trackers Court project, but also we're actually working on a scheme in Purley, undertaking the same process, which is all about stakeholder engagement. So we undertake a stakeholder mapping process right from the beginning. So engaging with a wide range of different ethnicities and institutions, including churches or mosques, the local authority, of course, who can usually signpost to other stakeholders, including young people. And for us, it's really important that we get the demographic right, not just in terms of ethnicity, which we have statistics for, but also in terms of age ranges, ensuring that the homes that are going to be built today, that are going to last the next 50, 60 years, robustly, are definitely engaging young people and children from the beginning. And because I highlighted certainly loneliness is a key issue that we have just generally with older people, it's important that we ensure that the whole group, the whole age demographic is represented in stakeholder engagement. And so we definitely go above and beyond to ensure that stakeholders of all different types, ethnicities and age and abilities are represented.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Great, thank you. I'm going to go and pass on to Jazz Bala, Architects now. I will flick on to the next slide and your time will start.
Thanks, Chloe. Hi everyone, my name's Jazz, Principal at Jazz Bala Architects. Our submission is called Parade Living, and it looks at the residential spaces above and behind Croydon's linear strips of retail. So this type of accommodation is disproportionately used by minority ethnic groups, and more often than not, it's of an extremely poor quality. Most of the retail offer in the borough sits within these parades, and as you can see from the plan, it's relatively well distributed across Croydon. The buildings themselves vary enormously in terms of style and period, but the businesses and shops at ground floor tend to be independent and tend to focus towards a particular ethnic group. In contrast to a retail offer, there's a lot less attention given to the residential elements of these buildings. As you can see from the photos, access is usually via refuse yards, flat roofs double up as children's play spaces often, and I'd be very surprised if any of them met modern amenity standards. The link between substandard housing, overcrowding, and COVID is well documented, as shown in the extract from The Guardian. Having seen planned changes to PD rights, allowing owners to convert retail spaces into dwellings, I think the majority of us on this call would worry that a bad situation is about to get worse. The accommodation itself is usually occupied by the employees of the businesses below. We spoke to a few shop workers to learn a little bit more about their living conditions, and on the whole, they got really nervous when we started to ask about who owns the space and how many people share a particular property. These conversations and these living conditions got us thinking about the power dynamic between freeholders, business owners, and residential tenants who often double up as employees. It's these tenants who are in the most precarious position as they're reliant on employment for substandard housing. This demonstrates how marginalisation is not uniform across a particular ethnic group. So how do we go about creating a step change in the quality of housing to provide a much needed improvement in the lives of current occupants? At the heart of the project is a strategy to identify the most viable sites to give us the best chance of bringing landowners to the table, resolving assembly issues, and demonstrating that as a collective, we can provide better housing than this. In the past, we've had private clients approach us about redevelopment projects in similar locations, and we found they only really work if you can significantly uplift the plot's footprint. The most straightforward way of assessing this is a simple plot area ratio analysis, which you can see on screen at the moment. So using this methodology, we're able to find certain types of retail parade that have greater development potential than others. Again, this is highlighted on the sort of simple scale you can see on your screen. We've run this analysis across 4 high streets in different parts of the borough to demonstrate that particular blocks have a significantly lower FAR than neighbouring buildings on the same street. The sites in Norbury and South Norwood, for instance, are within a couple of 100 metres from train stations. So that's the top image and the bottom image. They're ideal for creating car-free suburban housing. Taking an example from each of the 4 streets where infill housing might be appropriate, you notice there's a consistency to the urban grain. The plots are typically thin and deep and often around 4 to 5 metres in width and around 20 metres long. Given these similar characteristics, we think there's a chance of developing a single construction system that can work across multiple sites. Now, we know that leveraging the benefits of off-site construction on multiple sites is a lot easier in theory than it is in practice. But if we're working to the same response, to similar conditions, towards a similar design outcome, we think you have a much better chance of developing real economies in off-site manufacture. Our preliminary ideas have been designed to work as part of a volumetric system, which would in theory provide the most cost and sustainability benefits. Given the fact that we would be working in confined spaces, a panelized system may become more viable in the longer run. So using a 4.2 metre wide by 14 metre long module, we've developed a system of apartments that are 100% dual aspect and all benefit from cross ventilation. The arrangement we're showing utilises a compact core serving 2 apartments. There are other alternative configurations that also work and have a slightly less generous apartment to core ratio. The basic building block of the scheme involves 3 of these modules forming 2 apartments. From this arrangement, we're able to configure a range of apartment types, which have elements such as separate kitchens, home offices, retractable spaces, and also play spaces. All exceed minimum space standards and all have ample storage. These basic 1 and 2 bedroom units are then supplemented with 3-bedroom townhouses, duplexes, and 4-bedroom laterals, which are large enough to provide a form of multi-gen living. If we're intelligent about how we deploy these units, we can use them to create roof forms that respond to vernacular, communal terraces at higher level, or double height spaces. Given the fact that we're dealing with infill sites in a retail context, there's a need to ensure the ground floor uses can adapt to a changing economy. By creating an intimate landscape muse at the rear, there's scope for us to introduce townhouses at the ground floor, which gives greater flexibility in what the ground plane would be used for. So rather than just relying on retail, the ground floor could provide a range of uses, such as co-working spaces or childcare facilities. If developed in coordination, several sites could come together to provide a significant regenerative benefit to the high street, such as new cycling infrastructure or urban greening. Beyond the immediate focus on retail parades, we also think there's a potential to use a similar system to intensify other sites along main roads in the borough. These are just some of the sites where we think a similar approach could be used. At the heart of the project sits the idea that if we're serious about tackling race-based inequality, it's important to develop a nuanced understanding of how and why different cultures live in a certain way. There's often a difference between necessity and choice, and if we can bring this about this nuanced understanding, there's a huge potential to not only deliver much needed housing numbers, but also bring about material change to some of the most disadvantaged groups across the borough. That's it, thanks very much.
That's great, and lots of food for thought in terms of kind of making better use of those sorts of places and high streets. I'm going to go to Anisha again for another question. She had a really good Croydon specific one.
Thanks, Chloe. Thanks, Jazz. I think you've answered part of my question already, actually. But I'll ask anyway, because I'd love to hear a bit more. Can you please expand on your suggestion and the proposition to really rethink, and the opportunity to rethink ground floors and parade frontages and the role that they play? And what role do you envisage these playing as parades become more densely populated, as in your proposal? Several parades in Croydon, such as London Road in particular, provide important local services that also double up as community hubs for particular cultures and communities that it serves. How can your proposal capture the spirit as the areas intensify and celebrate it? Could quite easily be lost. So yeah, it'd be great to hear a bit more about that.
So when we first started looking at this idea, we thought about creating entrances to the residential apartments from the street, but that then took up much of the commercial floor space and would serve to undermine some of the retail spaces or the potential for community uses. So instead we looked at creating a kind of private landscape muse that allows people to access from the rear. And then what that does is it allows us to get an element of residential on the ground floor if needed. So in an ideal world, these places would retain their commercial use first and foremost. Retail, and as you say, supported by other things that the community wants and needs. But we are all aware that, that high streets are undergoing massive change. And what we've tried to embed in the proposal is an idea about flexibility. So you could subdivide the ground floor into smaller units, as is a pattern on places like London Road, or the modules could combine to create a more open plan space that allows things like co-working or childcare facilities or a community facility. The idea is for maximum flexibility. And we think in order to do that, you have to have a kind of option of bringing in residential if need be.
Thank you.
Cool.
Great. I'm going to kind of running a little bit behind schedule, so I'm going to move on to the next one, which is Christopher Adelaide Architects. All ready, all set? I'm going to flick over to the next one and then your time starts. Over to you, Christopher.
As Bertold Beckkin said, nothing is too good for ordinary people. Our presentation is about architecture for the reasonably ordinary. A proposal for an extraordinary housing type for ordinary people using modern methods of construction to deliver an economically and socially conscious housing type for people of Croydon. Firstly, here are some members of my team, a diverse lot in our studio in Kennington. We're a small team of architects, designers, and we also collaborate. Although this is our office, I'm a Croydon resident. And as most small practices, I started out in my bedroom in South Norwood, the Woodside ward of Croydon. Living in lockdown has meant I've had the chance to return to working from home. This gave me the chance to view the housing stock around the local streets of South Norwood and Woodside. The local housing stock, some of which are shown here, with the details of the arch, the porch, the pitched roof, the lintels over the windows, and the sense of diversity in colour. But of course, we design contemporary buildings. This gave me, our materials of choice, of course, has been bricks, stone, aluminium window profiles. So we posed the question, how could we build a future by taking elements of the past, ideas through a Victorian and Edwardian vernacular that is so loved by many, and deliver modular housing? So why Afro? I started back, the one that you see on screen, in February 2020, I got the chance to present what I call Afro House Concept 1 at the Developer Collective pitch. It was exciting, and the discussions from it went on social media, and we were approached by Modularize, a company that specializes in off-site and modular construction. Anyway, it was more than like with the Garden Cities movement for developments in Kent, and it was to be done in panelized and finished on site. We're still going to develop this idea, but our discussions with Modularize got us thinking about modules and facade systems instead of the panelized. So the conversation led us to ask about component housing, modular, that would be delivered quicker, more sustainably, and more beautifully. And we're thinking of being part of a revolution to solve the delivery of more housing. So here, the AXO is our creation of what is an off-site modular house. Unlike other modular houses, we've got the sashi, which is the middle components, and then our idea is bringing on a facade system that addresses the design limitations of traditional modular housing, and potentially having unlimited elevational ideas. By addressing the facade separately, we can create more depth. It's more easier to respond to variable local environments or conservation areas. We like to call it the biscuit. And as you can see, we've come up with many conceptual elevations that forms part of our new pattern book. We love brick, we love stone, but also love variety. The interchangeable facades potentially could be tailored for each Croydon postcode. It could be on a tight site or a large site. If we can fit the crane, there's a possibility we can deliver the Afro house anywhere. And this responds to different contexts and also means that each can have its own personality, differentiating in shapes, like I said, entrances, and we wouldn't have the modular feel with the depth in the facade. Modular needn't be boring. Also, if we can achieve cost certainty, affordability means housing for a better world may deliver stock in less time for diverse communities, housing families or single people alike to create better social mixes, removal also of fuel and furniture poverty. New affordable housing stock might just be achievable. As you can see, modular housing has the ability to be flexible with the layouts, combining this to suit different needs, appealing to different demographics. With the COVID-19 outbreak, more people are required to work from home, use the home as a classroom, or just find peace and quiet in different parts of the home. Mummy, I want to use Zoom. Anyway, you know, with the fabric first approach, we can create different kind of modular types. The Afro semi, which is two connected, or the Afro terrace, because it's off-site, there's more of an ability to create these spaces and deliver them. So by delivering the layouts, sorry, the next slide if possible. Are we there? Next slide. Oops, so we're definitely doing the 20 seconds. But the ability to have different layouts.
I think there's a bit of
oh, brilliant. Okay, we can create, sorry, I'm going to jump now, but we can create multiple and different floor plans, giving the occupier off-site ability to design their homes, adaptive floor layouts to suit family needs, especially at this time when we're working from home. The ability to have a study or a space to get away, to have your kitchen opened or closed, whether it's on the ground floor, the kitchen, you can work on the kitchen top. And then we go on to the next floor. I don't know any of you who actually share with a friend, but one of the things is who gets the short straw of the smaller room. You have possibilities of having shared size bedrooms and still having a space to work and sharing bathrooms. If you're going to go for the Afro wear properties, you could go up an extra story. And also in this time where we have to sometimes self-isolate, There's a possibility of having a connection with the bathroom that means that you isolate yourself away from the rest of the family without not living at home. And also intergenerational living. For some communities, this is key, and we must regard to ensure less overcrowding in homes. Unfortunately, like my Pitch It Develop Collective, where I printed 100 little houses, I am unable at this time to give you one to go home with, but I can still pose the question, why don't we build this city? Sustainable living with variety of streets and places to play around the framework idea of the Afro House, the biscuit facade with alternating floor plates to suit families and people of diverse backgrounds to make home feel like home, and affordable meaning affordable. And there will be cost certainty from the outset, the opportunity to train up Croydon residents to work and deliver these proposals. Croydon could build and deliver Afro Concept House. This could be the Croydon vernacular, removal of cars, people meeting each other, and if required, the space for social distancing, and et cetera, in this time that we are. The time is now. Could this be the new Croydon vernacular, and how wonderful it would be for it to be the Afro House? Thank you very much. Oops.
That's great.
I'm sorry.
Am I frozen or?
It's raining outside now. I think the tech is sorry. I missed that.
No, it's all right. I was gonna, Mother Joyce, are you able?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah.
Okay. Hi there, Christopher.
Hi there, how are you?
Hi there, how are you? You've got this wonderful vision of what the Croydon could look like, I think. So my question is this, what will you be doing to ensure community engagement throughout the process so you can get this wonderful city built?
Thank you very much for your question. One thing I'd like to say, we've created a pattern book for this process today, but the pattern book could be created by the Croydon residents themselves. Like I said, with the ability to be able to build off-site, you were able earlier on to engage with the community for their housing needs. The Afro idea, architecture for the reasonably ordinary, is not that we build reasonably ordinary houses, it's we build extraordinary houses for people like ourselves who are reasonable people. So I believe the community engagement idea will commence from the beginning, where we will give a pattern book. It's like a net that people can then fill. And how beautiful is it when you get the chance to put a little in and then actually achieve it on the other side. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. Okay, moving on. I think this is the penultimate one. So McCloy and Uchenwa.
Hello, hello.
Right. Hand over to you. Next slide starts your 20 seconds, and hopefully, sorry to Christopher for a few glitches in the middle of yours. My computer decided it needed a think. Right, over to you guys.
Hi, my name is Bob Muchemwa. And I'm Steve McCloy. We're McCloy Muchemwa, and we're pleased to present our team and our proposal.
We're the lead architect in our scheme, and we're supported by CZWG Architects.
Hi, I'm Patrick Massey from CZWG.
Hi, and I'm Adam at CZWG. We are supporting Bo and Steve because we wanted to give an exciting and talented new practice the opportunity of working with Brick by Brick, giving them the backup of experience.
Our concept is design, develop, delivery, and engagement will be based on key pillars: engagement, economic of means, and sustainability.
Engagement is essential before a design can even start, before there's anything to even comment on. And that engagement should continue into the life of a newly built place, and the buildings themselves should engage the community. Designing a better world, for us, involves trying to live in that better world that we're designing for all the way through the process.
Good engagement is our best chance to create buildings that complement the culture and diversity of the area. We'll take care to include all voices in the engagement process.
So that we get something like the above image rather than the below image. We know that well-insulated homes keep costs down. We know that attractive buildings and public spaces improve well-being and reduce vandalism. What we want to have is meaningful conversations with the clients about their visions and goals and with the community so that we can all make the architecture together.
New housing should respond to its surrounding, its context, passers-by. We will look to utilize asset-based community development mapping, a tool to enable imaginative inhabitation and help us foster community cohesion.
Through engagement with Brick by Brick and our consultants, this new housing will present us many opportunities, new ways of cost-effective building, and new ways to achieve the greatest sustainability that we can, and biodiversity, and working for all species. We have a commitment to that.
We will look at each site needs a careful attention on a case-by-case basis, but we will learn from other schemes nearby and further afield, remembering that this should be all loved places.
And we love the idea of working with unconventional and tricky small sites, because we believe that weaving streets and communities back together with imaginative infill projects is super exciting, and creativity and engagement are really the currency here.
Our approach is based on establishing ingredients of good housing, imaginative public space, like a bento box. We hope to delight in the right combination by adaptable nature, or our architecture can be at once site-specific, accommodating various hybrids and requirements.
We also, one of those ingredients is that we feel that informal encounters are extremely important, as is the everyday sense of well-being. So we're always pushing for beautiful places with generosity of planting and biodiversity, somewhere you can meet in nature.
During lockdown, people have been using front gardens, better realizing the value of neighbors. And post-COVID, there is a clear need for outside facing spaces, not only for intimacy, but for private use.
Safe places for children to interact and play will bring joy to the development. These can be simple, and we can draw from the great experiences and exemplar schemes such as Goldsmith Street in Norwich, which recently won the Sterling Prize, or our favorite, the 8 House in Copenhagen.
We want people to know their neighbors and feel that they can rely on each other. Front doors are an opportunity to assert your identity, but also should be a place to interact on an everyday basis.
So many of us have learned so much from the process of working from home, and even just from staying home. And the spaces we value are therefore changing considerably. We're excited to design homes that kind of fit for these new ways of living, because for us, housing for a better world requires new ways of living.
We want to create homes that are adaptable, flexible, and for long-term use. And we want to allow a flexible framework so that a house and an apartment can be a lifetime place for someone to stay.
All the little bits of leftover sites, any functional space has the potential to become what we call a community room. And I think with an optimistic design attitude, any indoor area or outdoor area has a potential to enhance relationships, community cohesion, or just add some of the simple shared luxuries of the lifestyle that we look for.
Any functional space, like the concept of the bento box, and inclusive of our core principle, we'll hope to find the right combination of aspiration, creative solution to deliver housing for a better world.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and amazing sketches. I love those. They just jump straight off the page. I'm going to hand over to Anisha again. Sorry, Anisha, keep on calling on you.
I think this is the last time you'll hopefully hear my voice. I didn't have so many questions, but thank you for that. I agree, really beautiful sketches. That were absolutely, yeah, just really engaging. So my question is really around the adaptability and the framework that you're setting out and proposing. And what you've proposed is that homes need to be adaptable and have the ability to evolve within this flexible framework or bento box over a lifetime. Can you give an example of this and what the framework will need to incorporate to ensure that all of the elements that you've set out for a sustainable and balanced habitat are actually well incorporated and can be delivered? So, for instance, what the fixed elements need to be and what needs to be adaptable within that framework, so that, yeah, all of the various amenities and other elements that will ensure that, yeah, that it's a really well balanced and vibrant habitat can actually be delivered.
Well, we're strong believers in infrastructure, and we believe that it's the imaginative inhabitation of the key infrastructure which will provide like a robust solution long term. So things that last 60, 70 years have to be made really well, and they're going to be a framework to take everything that's ephemeral infrastructure. And I suppose we developed this idea after looking at the Gerrit Rietveld Schroeder House in the Netherlands, and that building had a remarkable spirit of modernity, but was enabled by some very simple spatial tricks, such as movable walls, which allowed the children different spaces as they grew up, for example. But yeah.
Our idea of a bento box essentially says that you, through community engagement and client engagement, we can find solutions that will facilitate site-specific issues. And in that manner, we can have a very flexible approach. And it really, the key here is well done engagement, both with the public and the client.
Thank you.
Great. And finally, going on to Nimtim Architects. Thank you for waiting very patiently. I will hand over to you, and the timer starts when it flicks onto your slide.
Thank you. Hi, we're Nimtim, an architecture practice based in South London. We put people at the centre of the design process to create stories everyone can relate to. We talk, play and listen to understand the unique needs and ambitions of our clients and future building users. Through this approach emerges architecture full of playfulness and personality. We use cost-effective natural materials to create healthy, simple and joyful spaces, inspired by and designed with the people that will live, work and play in them. It is our view that we can only create truly sustainable, healthy buildings that reflect the diversity of our communities by talking and listening to the people that will live in them. We can only understand the challenges faced by different groups through listening to their stories. Our proposal was to speak with people in Croydon to inform our ideas about how to create better homes and neighbourhoods in the future. I grew up in South London and am from a large Asian family, half of whom live in Croydon. So what type of place is it? It's very big, very young, very diverse compared to the rest of the country, and affordable compared to the rest of London. It was particularly hard hit through COVID. And although these statistics can tell some of the story about Croydon, what we really wanted was to find out how people felt. Having committed to a dialogue with the people of Croydon, we created a challenge for ourselves to do so in the middle of a global pandemic and the summer holidays. So during the past 2 weeks, we spoke to housing associations, tenant representatives, local charities and social enterprises. We spent time on Croydon's many high streets speaking to the people on the ground. We asked them about Croydon, their homes, COVID, etc., but mostly we listened.
And we learned that in general, people love living in Croydon. They loved its diversity and they liked the way it was changing. People were genuinely very conscious that COVID and the climate crises are changing things very quickly. And there's a strong emphasis on the benefits of a sense of community. We've created a series of scenarios and solutions based on these conversations. Many people struggled with space during lockdown, particularly where more than one person was working or learning from home, and it was hard to find space for online meetings and collaborations. This would appear to be a longer term trend and will require greater flexibility within the home, but also within each neighbourhood. Future housing therefore needs to respond to this challenge. Can we create co-working spaces within developments? Might these be paid for by slightly reduced unit sizes? Could they be used for children's birthday parties, events or exhibitions by residents of the weekends? And could they become a source of income by renting to people within the local neighbourhood? Isolation was a big problem amongst older people, but surprisingly also for younger people under 30. This asked the question of whether there was a problem with our homes, which through planning and the market had prioritised privacy over other concerns for many years. Examples from other countries during lockdown showed how different relationships between homes can encourage interaction and communication. Can these stories start to question orthodoxies relating to overlooking distances between homes and gardens? Could we create developments that celebrate interaction and communication between homes? And could these new connections create better communities and reduce antisocial behaviour? Access to green space, whether private or through a shared garden, was also a common concern, particularly when discussing lockdown. COVID exacerbated existing disparities between homes with and without access to outdoor green space. Through a local mental health charity, we learned about David, who greatly valued the ability to garden and grow after moving into his first flat. Both private and shared green spaces can be problematic, as not everyone gardens. However, the provision for growing could be provided within each home. This could be through allowing space for window boxes in balconies, or the provision of shared allotments on rooftops. The benefits of green space to adults and children has become even more apparent, and this needs to be built into the design of our homes. All of our staff live in South London and have worked from home during lockdown. They were a useful source of feedback for demographics struggling to afford their own homes and often living in difficult circumstances for working away from the office. Pippa was working from a shared living room in a top floor flat, which got particularly hot and uncomfortable this summer, and there was no access to outdoor green space. Overheating and discomfort in hot weather is an increasing problem, and something many of the people we spoke to mentioned. We need to learn from traditionally warmer countries and employ passive techniques to manage overheating. Our changing climate also makes access to outdoor green space even more critical. Many people noted the additional pressure on mental well-being without access to breakout spaces when working from home. Over 14% of Croydon's population don't speak English as a first or main language. Through a housing association, we heard about Haya, a Syrian asylum seeker, who couldn't find out about changes to local services because the notices were only posted in English. Simple solutions like a digital notice board offering instantaneous translations in an entrance lobby can transform the experiences of residents who might otherwise feel marginalised. Many people talked about a desire for community. Can we start thinking about entrance spaces differently? Can these become focal points for residents and beyond? Fostering community can reduce or even eliminate other costly problems like antisocial behaviour or building damage. Could a generous and welcoming entrance space pay for itself?
This strikes a chord with my own experience. We spoke to many, particularly Black and Asian families who enjoyed living together even when children became adults. They often wanted to stay in town centre locations for access to specific shops or services they might not find in suburban areas where most of the larger houses are typically located. Croydon still has a traditional town planning approach with smaller units aimed at a younger demographic in town centres and larger family homes in the suburbs. However, this isn't necessarily how many BAME communities want to live. What did we learn from this brief survey? That the diversity of the borough is not necessarily reflected in its existing and new housing stock. That COVID and the climate crisis are creating new challenges and conditions, suggesting new approaches to the design of our homes. A desire for community is a common theme. Can we encourage community through the design and planning of projects? It's only through listening that we can design homes which are sustainable, promote well-being, and that represent the diversity of Croydon. This means talking to existing and future communities earlier in the process and expanding dialogue so it reaches out to those who might not engage in more traditional and formal consultation events. Development often lacks a human story that people can relate to. Through the process of dialogue, we can create narratives for projects based on the needs and stories of real people. This helps build connections with funders, planners, builders, and local communities who will in turn be more likely to support, promote, and invest in the project. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that really, really rich presentation and lots of interesting kind of ideas and very, very well kind of researched thoughts and comments. I'm going to pass over to Praga for the final question.
Hi, yeah, I agree. Like the design looks really great, and I love the presentation as well. I really like how you touched upon ideas to sort of increase revenue and the co-working and event space, and in terms of like opening that up to the public, which sort of would help bring new experiences as well. But as you mentioned, like the co-working spaces would be paid for through reducing space inside the actual dwellings. I'm just curious, how much space would you want to reduce from the dwellings, and would that in turn sort of affect living standards where residents are sacrificing a larger open living space for the creation of the multi-use zones?
I think it's one solution, and I think our point is that we would talk with the residents and community beforehand to find the right solution. So it may be that, I mean, these things have to be balanced against costs. So it may be that you can justify very slightly smaller units because they don't have to provide working space to find the space for co-working. But equally, it might be found in another part of the site and might be justified through future revenue.
I think in all the projects that we do, sometimes they have flexible spaces within the living accommodation, so they can be multi-purposeful. So they work a lot harder, and then that can release space elsewhere in the development for more community-based activities.
Okay. Thank you very, very, very much for everybody's presentations. You're gonna give us a really, really tough time, I think, in terms of trying to make a decision. I think we've gone a little bit over time, but I think we've got a bit more. I think we're allowed a little bit more time. If anybody had any pressing questions or anything else from the judges, I think we've also opened up the chat to the wider forum as well. So do let us know if anybody has any more questions that they'd like to put to our finalists. I will just want to say a huge thank you to everybody who submitted entries. We had a really, really large number, and we pledged to get feedback to everybody who asked for it as well. I'm going to say a big thank you to our judges as well, because I know it takes an awful lot of time and energy as well. And then also a big thank you to Stephen Lawrence Charitable Trust, who's our partner for the competition. It's been obviously a large number of huge amount of food for thought, but kind of very similar themes emerging in terms of greater engagement with the community through the design and construction of the schemes. There's obviously, I think with COVID, kind of a big focus on adaptability in the homes that we're creating. In particular, kind of how those will address and access to green space in particular. Our next steps, I think there's a couple of questions coming in, which I'll refer to the floor in a second. But we've, just to fill you in on our next steps, so we won't be revealing our decision live. We've got a little bit of food for thought to sleep on, and we'll be coming back together as judges tomorrow with a view to make an announcement of the winning practice on Wednesday. And we will be, obviously, I've mentioned kind of, this isn't kind of a one-off kind of stunt for us. It's very much about kind of informing how we can better commission all of our services. So a lot of this will kind of go into feed that process. One question coming in from Ganesh. I'm going to read it out, if that's all right. Please follow if you'd like to read it out yourself. The aspirations of having larger homes to meet the needs experienced during COVID-19 are great, but how do we persuade developers to allow for this? This is a good question for me. Maybe not a question that can be answered, but more of a point. I think Nim Tim have answered it, to be honest. These additional spaces are provided elsewhere in the development. And I think that's kind of really, really useful question, and one that we kind of constantly looking to kind of review and explore. It's kind of, I think it's always for us, it's really challenging to create good value homes on the sorts of sites and developments that we work on, and it's always finding the right balance between good quality kind of build versus kind of the actual space that we're creating. And I think we're always looking for new ways to do that, and so there's lots of interesting ideas about how we could start to bring that on board. So I'm just trying to read questions out live.
I've unmuted Jake if he wanted to read it out.
Yeah, Jake, would you like to ask your question or read it out? Oh no, it's not unmuted.
Thanks. Okay, cool, mic check. Yeah, nice one. Thanks for the presentation. We're trying to get a community land trust off the ground in Greenwich, and we're at that hesitant moment of trying to engage in communities in perhaps more sort of dynamic ways than just a couple A2 boards. And so just in terms of actually engaging with future residents and existing local communities, do any of the teams have any ideas on more effective ways of doing this past the present experience? Welcome.
Can I have a go?
Or maybe that's a brick by brick question. Yeah, please.
One of our projects actually that we worked on, one way that we found was really engaging was that we actually brought verbal blocks to the community, to students. So they got a chance actually to build, although quite abstract, they got a chance to build the spaces they wanted. And of course, well, not of course, but they weren't architects, but what that really gave us a feel for was actually the quality of space they wanted. We very much look at the community or stakeholders as the experts, and we're the professionals. So we never come in with any formed ideas, knowing that actually it's about drawing out from them what their aspirations are. But we found that was very engaging. They all got hands-on. So we used different methods, including post-its and different colors to represent different ideas. But I thought the verbal blocks for us was really, really engaging.
Is that verbal blocks or verbal blocks?
Verbal blocks, the little timber blocks that you play with as kids, basically. Cool. But it was a really cool way of getting everyone really hands-on.
Thanks.
No worries.
Yep.
Can I add to that? Sorry, go on.
Oh, you can go first.
Well, thank you very much. I love the idea. I have to say, my presentation may have not included much of this community engagement idea, but that's not the point. My point in the building was that there is variety, and with variety, providing that with people, they're able to choose. One thing we did do once as a presentation, we sent out nets to people, so nets of the houses, because with building off site, there's places, things you can do and things that you can't. So we've got to give people kind of something to work within. So within those nets, they were able to color it in, put it together, and we built a city. And it was kids playing around and having that joy and choice to be able to create these little boxes that they say, oh, I could live in that because I designed it. So I think play is a really interesting thing to get people to engage. And now with the COVID, you can send something in the post and have people create those, and they can send it back, and you can create a really joyful thing, maybe in the center of South Norwood Park, having all these houses poked into the ground, and then the kids can come and relate to it. That's my thoughts.
Thanks.
For you to go?
Yes.
Oh, Yeah. Our first ever project was to build a pavilion for the Leeds Art Gallery. And the Leeds Art Gallery was closed for renovation for a few years. And the new pavilion it's like kind of similar to Serpentine Pavilion. But it would, the idea was it was like a pilot project to relaunch the gallery. And it was filled with community-focused arts events, you know, of all kinds of workshops. And the point was that because it was a pilot, they had 5,000 or 6,000 engagements. People used to stay there for hours. And it really got the whole buzz about the gallery opening started again. And all the data collected from the pilot project could then easily feed back into the main project of the refurbishment.
I think we will also understand that engagement here is in two parts. One part is acknowledging that we may not be engaging with people that will immediately live in the buildings that are going to be designed, but we're going to be engaging with people that are going to be affected by the new building. So essentially, there should be a way of trying to sort of hear all those voices and try to sort of
yeah, but between the users and then just people who are affected and the neighbours.
And the neighbours, yeah.
And how did you find that sort of filtering process of like taking lots of information and going?
I think when we did the pilot scheme for the Leeds Art Gallery, the filtering process was very heavy. We ended up using volunteers and
questionnaires
and interns and questionnaires and like master's students. It was extremely interesting to work with the clients to take data and turn it into first information and then into eventually wisdom about the project.
Yeah, I think the how that project was successful is because it involved play and involved games, programs for kids to make bread, all sorts of things like that. So it itself kind of lowers people's innovations, and they can engage with what you're trying to do.
Thanks.
Right. I think we've probably just about run out of time. I think there's another event starting very shortly. But yeah, just reiterate big thanks and yeah, watch this space.
Yeah, great. I think we have to wrap up now, which is really sad. I wondered if Betty wanted to say a few words. She didn't get to speak during the main presentation. Betty?
Oh, thank you, Rosie.
Sorry, Betty.
Oh no, it's fine. It's fine. I really enjoyed all the presentations, and I think each of them brought really interesting and different aspects of the issues that Croydon is facing to the table. And for example, Jazz balanced parade living and like the really specific contextual condition of the housing. Then I'm going all the way to Christopher Adelaide's pattern book approach to architecture. And I think they're going to be hard pressed to pick somebody tomorrow. But I guess a question if I ask one really, really quick question is, it's just maybe a slightly negative question, but what would your approach be if you were to meet with kind of silence from communities, that you were reaching out to communities within Croydon and they didn't want to engage? What would your approach be then?
Is that to us, is it in Brick by Brick or the?
I guess to the wider panel, but also if you feel you could answer it as well, I don't mind.
I think if I could just jump in there, I think that would be unheard of, frankly. I think one of the things that it's really important for designers to think about is that we turn up in people's communities and we almost demand that they talk to us because we're ready and we're there at that point and we've done loads of drawings. And actually we have to be patient with them and kind of, because we often talk about hard to reach groups and how hard it is for us to reach them, but we don't necessarily think about how hard it is for them to reach us in reverse. And we have to kind of be patient and make the space for them to come and talk to us.
I would say that one thing to add, though, I do think sometimes people in more precarious housing situations might be less willing and less able to come forward. Work pressures, time pressures. You know, if you were to reach out, sometimes I imagine people most interested in consultation are those who don't want any infill housing and want to maintain the status quo. So I think as architects and designers, we also kind of have to be almost researchers and try to seek those people out in the way that David said. So I think it's about sometimes going further than just putting on a stakeholder event, really sitting down with landowners and housing owners in a kind of seeking them out and trying to engage them directly rather than holding it in a kind of charrette type event.
I think we'd agree with that. And I think sometimes you have to kind of create a voice for the ones who can't be heard. So there is going out there and trying to reach out to people, and there's better ways of doing that now. Playing games can engage with people who maybe don't speak English or aren't as confident coming to community events. But sometimes you have to research and find out who those people are and almost give them a voice yourself or through the other people that you work with.
And very quickly, using digital platforms, which are now very much available as a critical way of not obviously physically being there, and COVID has forced us to lean more heavily on, which is more engaging, certainly with a younger demographic as well.
Yeah, I think we'd definitely echo all of those points. Just to kind of wrap up in terms of engagement, it's very rarely that you meet silence. I think it's kind of about the nature of the conversation, and if you don't get that many people, I guess, who respond to you, then you're probably asking it in the wrong way. And just kind of need to keep on pursuing that conversation, really. But yeah, we almost certainly need to make way for the next Architecture Foundation event. So yeah, we will say farewell for now, and watch the space on Wednesday.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for everyone involved. See ya.
Bye-bye.